Rightio. Happiness. I needed to wait till this morning. Ha ha ha. Now, not particularly happy because the weather's gone. Ugh. I was going to do this in sunshine at the paradise little cove. Happiness. But I have to remember something. Now this really is, as stated, happiness for the over 50s. Twice in the last 10 days, I've woken up actually happy, pretty happy, no, kind of very happy. And specifically because I just randomly, in 10 days, I said to somebody yesterday, I'm not really happy. And there's kind of side reasons for that. If you put everything into the big last change in life and it fails, well, it's inevitable. You're not happy. However, yes, in 11 months here, I was meeting pretty naff people. I have nevertheless met in 10 days two of the top 5 most extraordinary people, people I've met in life. The second one, I'll probably never see either of them again. I don't know, you don't know. You give somebody your phone number and definitely want to be friends. But anyway, forget that. Nevertheless, so the first one, Mrs. Total former Soviet Union, I woke up, I just so enjoyed speaking with her 10 days ago. And then Mrs. Half, well no, she's not, father, former Soviet Union satellite states. Anyway, really enjoyable, grown up. Yes, that's the key to it. Just meeting and spending quite a few hours chatting with a grown up. So enjoyable. Happiness. And those two occasions in respect of other people, yes, happy making experiences. At the end of the day, other people come and go in life. Now, that's just, I need to remember that. I don't know. I mean, you can't though, or rather, one's happiness cannot ever be sustained long-term happiness, bulletproofness, as I was saying to the lady yesterday. Truth? I trained my daughter when she was 7 or 8, because you must always have a way of assisting children to have some kind of control in the relationship. They must have their little bit of power. I would train my daughter, if you want to make your dad the laughing stock of the pub, or lunch, restaurant, get out, Watership down, and I would kind of carry it with us. Read out the last 2 pages, and your dad will be a gibbering wreck, crying real tears of beautiful universal sorrow. Not because I got some mental disorder, because I'm actually, for 20 years in many ways, in my 20s and 30s, I was kind of sentimental's the wrong word. I was overly full of the sorrows of existence. Now, quickly. So, happiness. Now, yesterday, in my Ralph Schism I put a picture and referred to, or I think it was a bit of a video, or I may not have even done it yet, of a large pepper, plastic see-through pepper container, pepper grinder. Now, I just happened to have I essentially was 3/4 orphan from the age of about 13. For real. I chose a different path to my family, siblings, and literally was 3/4 orphan. And spent a lot of my teens wandering the hills alone. My siblings went to boarding school. I didn't. I refused to have anything to do with that fucking inhuman, stupid thing, and went to the local comp and spent my life with the ordinary lower middle class people of the area. But we lived in a region with lots of hills, isolated 5-6 kilometers from the town. I spent a lot of time roaming alone. Why did I mention that? Yeah, 3/4 orphan, and I always was so. Oh yes, I know why I mention it. My family were one of the first family in the region, and then via siblings and brother-in-law, none of whom I had much to do with. They're some of the first people. If you'd have gone around every household in my youth, I think probably we would have been the only one who had olive oil. My mother and then both parents jumped on this foodie bandwagon before it was even a thing. Epicurean, call it what you want. I can't look at the camera because I have actually got to keep my eyes down here. Getting dirty feet. Right. Yeah. And then I even had a brother-in-law who had actually a famous little restaurant in London, central London, Princess fucking Di, who was the number one fake. That was the moment this stupid country went even stupider. Intellectuals say. Right. Yeah. Food. Sorry. It's fuel. Full stop. And I've eaten in the best restaurants in the world. I've had food that gives you almost a oral orgasm. Due to my work going around accompanying sometimes the jet setters, food's food. I just like that. To me, there's so many more interesting and important things in life than what bloody food. Showing off about food. Right. The sea isn't one of them. Why do I have a great big long salt cellar? There's probably going to have to be 2 parts to this. Because as 15 years ago I got 10 years ago really, totally, because somebody that mattered to me, somebody who I'd adopted, a younger woman, she wanted to get into the egalitarian and green politics of the region, and I didn't nudge her. It was satisfying to see her gradually come to that. So, yeah, as riffed upon, I need to write the proper book. I don't want to point fingers at any individual, but I lived in a region which is pretty sparsely populated, so it's impossible to really write anything about any story, any event, any process without, he's writing about that person. Anyway, so from 10 years ago, through her for a year, and then 2 years nearly, and she just tentatively took part, wanted to take part, put herself forward, the pure Thomas More version 505, 6, 7 years ago. Oh look, I know there was a crow there. That's beautiful. There's a crow there. The person who doesn't want to be the leader should be the person who ends up being the leader. And she was a fantastic example of that. I'm just going to sit up here for a few minutes. Yes, so we did that, and everybody knew she would have made a great kind of local councillor. And just to see how the older women chipped away at her. Anyway, point. For 10 years, being active in environmental matters, etc., the time waste, the total time waste. Now, I started to discover this 20 years ago. But, and this is going to sound pathetic, but here's a fact. So the only foodie thing, one of the great things I've done in life is stop really using salt. That's important. I used to kind of be slightly addicted to having a lot of salt on my food. Probably about 25 years ago I dropped that. And yeah, I still like ground pepper. That's my only foodie luxury in life. Loads of garlic ideally, but ground pepper. I haven't bothered the last few years, but average size pepper pot, every couple of weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you're having to refill it. It's always a bit of a fiddly job, that. And this sounds so inane, but this, I put so much of my time, firstly into the green matters for a few years from 2014, merely as the sidekick, bolsterer to somebody seriously trying to do it. Then B, for 3 years, 2017, 18, 19, into trying to harvest every European vote if there were going, or ally, or whatever, if there were going to be another vote, and then other things, going back into my informal but totally dedicated, unpaid, real headfuck kind of social work, supporting, wrong word, just really trying to fix partially situations in 3 or 4 families from 2020 where they're really fucking up their kids because they can't deal with the bug and they've gone back to booze and drugs and that kind of thing. Okay, people, but total SOS. Right. Once a month, 5 minutes to do that job of refilling the pepper. Nope. Big one, I got at some charity shop. Means once a year. So I've saved, let's assume every 2 months, I've saved half an hour by having that big pepper pot a year, maybe 45 minutes. Sounds pathetic, but that's what my life has been like. But it's important because the only reason I've kept going is because I also have the space. Having the space to process the shit is terribly important, and the time. So you've got to have your space and time to just meander through the really tough things that people do to you and whatever. So you've got to, in your ongoing life, that is a beautiful example of super simplifying that large pepper pot. But I have that is replicated in 2 or 3 different things, just the small little ongoing tasks in life, figuring ways literally to save an hour or 2 a year on a repetitive action because you've adopted that habit. And one was, it sounds so pathetic, but I would leave the cover off my electric shaver because you actually have to recharge. I've only ever used rechargeable batteries, so it's like every 3 or 4 days, every week maybe, take the batteries out and change them and charge them. Actually leaving the cover off ended up saving me. That saved me about, probably an hour over a year. Now that sounds pathetic. That sounds like I've got a mental fucking disorder or on the spectrum. I can quite assure you not. Right, now, actually this is quite a good place for the next bit, but I've got to do it so quickly because I want to get walking. The only... I think I've waffled on metaphysics. Now, I'm going to do literally this. I'm going to do 3 minutes into this camera, and then I'm going to do probably half an hour of waffle as I carry on the walk into the Duda. I can't remember when it was, but it probably was about 10 years ago, maybe 11, 12, and sadly I can't remember whom. I heard somebody speaking about how the Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, I read the Iliad when I was a kid, I think, were the fundamental template to the Western Judeo-Christian or Western civilization mindset. And I kind of think that's true. I was so bored in about 2012, maybe 2011, that I got the Odyssey from the library. And I really enjoyed it. It depends which translation, I guess. It's kind of a little bit clunky, but yes, I get it. That is, I strongly believe. Now, yesterday I listened to Dylan's speech for his Nobel. I had misthought that he said that. No, he just rightly points out that the events in something like, in the Odyssey, in a way, and it's beautiful the way he says this, it's like people have to go through their own cyclops, their own whirlpools, their own, what are they called, the sirens, and all of this stuff. Being poisoned, having your drink laced with something or other. I had that happen to me aged 18, and possibly some bloke did nasty things to me. Didn't traumatise me, and that was a really interesting thing we covered yesterday. I'd actually forgot. I should have told her about that. Yeah. Anyway, let's keep to the point, because basically what happened prior to when you're 50-ish or 52, 53, it's all just a great big fucking mess, life. But here's the thing. Now, as stated, categorically, I do believe there's something more than this materialist reality, or however the atheists speak of being sat on a rock. I have no idea what it is. No idea. And I've read and listened to many intelligent, or rather eloquent speakers. No, you should never claim you know anything. However, I just kind of put in my head, I think this is a helpful, now I'm not into, describing how happiness occurred, how one ended up happy, is therapeutic. Anybody who thinks Richard Mabey's Nature Cure book has got the answer, you'll discover it doesn't give you the answer, and there are very few people in this life who should be drowned, and I'm a pacifist, so I'm just saying that jokingly, but that book is problematical. Anyway, so there I am, 15 years ago nearly, 14 years ago, just life destroyed. I did a few years later, maybe about 10 years ago, say. No, it was 12 or 13 years ago, and there's a reason I remember why. I said, okay, I'm going to almost pretend that this book, The Odyssey, is the template, and that's what the metaphysical system is, that we're each in an Odyssey, our own actual, more or less Homeric, the book of the Odyssey, or rather the Iliad and the Odyssey. That's the kind of metaphysical schema. And if I were to say I have a theosophy, it's like, that's kind of, sometimes I think that's what, or to use the dreadful lexicon. That's what the matrix or the hologram is. I prefer to avoid the word matrix, which has definitely got slight homoerotic undercurrents. Is it Keanu Reeves? Every bloke seemed to really rather like Keanu Reeves. Anyway, none of my business. I've never been like that. Right, so it's like, to me, or the framework. That's the better word. The framework. Maybe, just me. If there is a way of perceiving what is this ineffable other dimensions or things that are maybe the angels are invisible, but literally they're moving my lips now. It's impossible to know. But the framework, I kind of said, okay, I'm going to lean in. Oh, no, let's not use that fucking phrase. I'm going to just embrace, or just let go. I'm going to let go into saying, right, okay, maybe that is the framework that's from the ineffable realm, that we're each in a version, we are each in a kind of almost full-on Iliad Odyssey, which is 20 years. And I say to myself, well, okay, when did mine start? Well, definitely the last time it ends is the 20th of June this year. That's the 20th anniversary of something that really was, yeah, she was a Trojan horse, I'm afraid, and did do a lot of damage. Bet she was lost and damaged. Anyway, now, that's it really for why I have the camera on, because that is, maybe we are in a better age in a way where all sorts of metaphysical belief systems, people can express them and not be thought deserving of a dunk in the river, or a terminal dunk in the river, as used to happen to the witches. I think it used to happen to witchy men as well. I don't know if it was just a witchy woman thing. Oh, dunk them in the river, and if they survive, they're definitely witches, so chop them to bits, and if they drown, they weren't witches. I don't know, it's just so nonsensical to go on about all these paths. I'm only interested in tomorrow. Anyway, as I was saying, yes, various belief systems, it's kind of acceptable to speak about them openly, but I still am very, very cautious. I don't think to claim something is a problem. For a human being, I don't really believe there is such a thing as a God, but for a human being to claim insight, special knowledge, I think it's terribly problematical. So, I've allowed myself to have the working framework. Sometimes I think, don't spout or think such rubbish, but it's a working, it's a draft, it's whatever it is. Yeah, the framework. That, okay, pretend that's the pretend that's almost the deity, that we are in, each of us, a 20-year Iliad and Odyssey. So, I'm going on to the next bit in a moment. But I certainly don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I pray to you, Homer, and the Odyssey. What does the Odyssey, what phase of the Odyssey am I in today? The only reason I actually mention this is because of two individuals who, over the last 20 years, the first one I met 13 years ago, when I met him, I said to myself quite quickly, it's almost like he doesn't fit in to the Odyssey, the people, the hurdles, the barriers that I have come to see people as slightly. So I'm going to call him the narrator. And this was the Mormon. I actually told him after a little while, it's like, in my Odyssey, which I try and keep a record of and think about to a certain extent, you are not actually somebody who there is crossover. Your actions and my actions do not cross over and really affect each other, even though we've spent a lot of time in communication. So it's like you're the narrator figure in my little theory that we live in an odyssey. And then I switched narrator. I told her I've met her after a month or two. This lady I met, Susie, in April 2020. She couldn't give a shit about COVID. Anyway, so it's like, it's like you now have replaced the first narrator. You're the new narrator. And actually, and she understands that. We had quite a long chat yesterday. I was sat on the cliff just up there. Right, I'm now going to turn off the camera, but please don't put that down on my psychological report. He thinks that they live in the Odyssey, and the baddies are Cyclops, and the whatevers and whatevers, and I've certainly survived the what are they called? The sirens. Yeah, I mean that one makes me laugh, because you've got to laugh. That's the important thing. Right, camera off and carry on audio.